Hi, welcome back to Doc Talk Part B of episode 4.
Yes.
All right, today we're in, I'm going to try to hurry before the sun goes down. We're in Luke 22:13 through 38. This is still, just like the last 3 weeks, the Lord's Supper, or the Last Supper, or it's Passover is what it is. And you can see that from Matthew, Mark, and Luke all say that it's a Passover meal. But John doesn't. He calls it the Last Supper. And I look at it like this. It was a day early, but let's say we all celebrate Thanksgiving, and everybody comes in, but you have some work to do on Thanksgiving Day, like Yeshua had work to do on Passover. So you have it a day early, which is what they were doing. And so...
And can I add something?
Yes, please.
It's kind of a double meaning, that dinner, because a teacher, when they've been teaching for a long time, it's kind of like a graduation, they would do a dinner. So not only was that early Passover to teach, it was their graduation dinner. And in that, a part of the last lesson to be taught had to do with the Seder. Right. Had to show who he was in that. Therefore, that was a last dinner. So it's not an argument whether, that was Passover dinner or it wasn't. It was a celebration for them. But in it, he had to teach that, who he was, so that they could watch it be fulfilled the next day.
Right. And that's what we're going to talk about today, how he tied all of that in. So, let's see. So that was my first point. My second point is, do this in remembrance of me. There is so much said about do this in remembrance of me. But I'm going to read the command to eat the bread. It says in verse 19, "And when he had taken some bread and given thanks, he broke it and gave it to them, saying, 'This is my body, which is given for you. Do this in remembrance of me.'" Now, during the Passover Seder, that's what you do. You take the unleavened bread, which unleavened represents without sin. You take that bread, you break it, and you give it out.
And that matzah has stripes, and it's pierced. And
That's right. It is. It's striped. It's pierced. It looks. It's so symbolic. Yeah. It's such an example. So he wasn't instituting a new command. He was not instituting a new way of doing things. What he was doing was giving a deeper meaning to an already existing practice that they held. And so when he broke the bread in the Seder, it was called the bread of affliction. And he was letting them know, this is my body that will be given for you. So
because that's what was going to happen tomorrow, the next day.
Right.
So, it's not even the next day. I mean, we're talking hours after this. This is what happens to Yeshua's body.
Right, because
so they had to think
right
about
after
that.
This is when he went to the Garden of Gethsemane, prayed the 3 times, like Cam talked about, for the cup to pass from him. All right, so the cup of redemption. He goes on to in verse 20 and says, "And in the same way, he took the cup after they had eaten." That's in here they call it the cup of thanksgiving. There are 4 cups in a Seder dinner. This was the 3rd. It was the one after dinner, and it says that. I think in verse 18 he tells of a cup that let's see, 17, taking the cup, giving thanks, he said, "Take this and divide it among you." But down in 20, he takes the cup after the meal, which is the 3rd cup, and he says, "And in the same way, he took the cup after they had eaten, saying, 'This cup, which is poured out for you as the new covenant in my blood.' This was the 3rd cup, called the cup of thanksgiving." So I want to talk about the new covenant, because this is a big area where we as Christians get the idea that we're in the new covenant now. So I'm just going to read what the new covenant is.
Confused about what it is.
I'm not saying we're not. I'm just saying I'm going to read what the new covenant is. Jeremiah 31:31. "See, the days are coming, declares Yahweh, when I shall make a renewed covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah, not like the covenant I made with their fathers in the day when I strengthened their hand to bring them out of the land of Egypt, my covenant which they broke, though I was a husband to them, declares, for this is the covenant I shall make with the house of Israel after those days, declares Yahweh. I shall put my Torah in their inward parts and write it on their hearts, and I shall be their Elohim, and they shall be my people." So the new covenant is with the house of Israel and the house of Judah.
And I want to say this. we say new, it's renewed covenant. It's not a new thing. It's not like something old and something new. It's a renewed covenant. It's like if you wanted to
renew your vows.
Yes, have a second honeymoon after 20 years. That's what's happened, but it's a new generation.
And it's important to know that he divorced the house of Israel. There were two houses, the house of Judah and the house of Israel. Israel was divorced. A lot of Christians think that he divorced the whole as a whole, but he didn't. He divorced the northern kingdom, which was Israel. And what?
Well, I'm saying, and he couldn't. Had he divorced Judah, that would have made Yeshua a bastard child.
And you can't have a bastard child.
Can't do that. Well, it's not as a savior. I mean, he's got to be of a legitimate, right? So, spiritually, he came from the line of Judah, which was still married to the Lord, still under covenant, a wedding covenant.
Right. And he even says that several times. He said, I only came for the house of Israel.
Right.
Because the whole point was for there to be a death. Because until there was a death, he can't remarry, he can't regraft them in to what already exists.
Like in Ephesians, there really was no hope for them. None.
Right. Because they were divorced.
Right.
So you can't remarry them. But through Yeshua's death, they come in, grafted back into the covenant, and that's what the new covenant is about. So basically, I would say that right now, we have the Holy Spirit, which is a down payment for the new covenant. But we're not fully in the new covenant, and if you go on to read Jeremiah 31 through 33 or 34, it will tell you what it will look like when we are in the new covenant, and we're just not there yet.
And Hebrews 8 and 9 talks about that too, that it shows we are not. I mean, heaven and earth, the sky will rip when we're in that.
Well, the Torah portion of Deuteronomy talks about that this week. He said,
yes.
Today I call heaven and earth to witness to you.
That's right.
To witness these commands which I give you, which the Lord gives you, not Moses, but which the Lord gave through Moses. He called heaven and earth, which is why Yeshua says, Matthew 5, that until heaven and earth pass away, not one jot or tittle will by no means pass until all the law is fulfilled. And we think, oh, well, it's all been fulfilled when he died on the cross. It is not. Heaven and earth is still here. I am looking at heaven and the earth right now out here on the dock. Yes, we were baking earlier. That's right. We were. It was hot. Anyway, so I just wanted to touch on that in the new covenant. Okay, the third thing I want to touch on is that Passover was kept after Yeshua's death and resurrection. We think that was the end all to the law or to his feast, but it wasn't. So we see in 1 Corinthians 5, 7 through 8, Paul is talking to Corinth, and he says, Therefore, cleanse out the old leaven, so that you are a new lump as you were unleavened. For also Messiah, our Passover, was slaughtered for us. So then, let us celebrate the festival, not with old leaven, nor with the leaven of evil and wickedness, but with the unleavened bread of sincerity and truth. He also goes on in 1 Corinthians 11:26. He talks exactly what happened in Luke, this week's portion that I'm talking about. Also, I'd like to talk about Acts 20. I'll start with 6. And we sailed away from Philippi after the days of unleavened bread, and came to them at Troas in 5 days, where we stayed 7 days. And on day 1 of the week, the top ones having gathered together to break bread, it shows right here that they were keeping the days of unleavened bread. And also, I'd like to talk about...
This is Paul, who everyone says... He says that it's all done away with, and he doesn't.
And he continued to keep the feast. You can even go on in 21 and see how he went to the temple, gave sacrifices.
He even paid for someone else's
sacrifices because they were finishing a Nazirite vow. But one of the things in 7 that I just want to touch on is our Bibles say on day 1 of the week, but that's really not what the Greek says. The Greek says Mia Sabbatos, which means first Sabbath. So exactly what so many people use to prove that they met on Sunday instead of Sabbath is actually proving that they kept the feast, because if you go to Leviticus 23, and it says, and from the morrow, this is verse 15, and from the morrow after the Sabbath, this was first fruits, from the day that you brought the sheaf of the wave offering, you shall count for yourself 7 completed Sabbaths. Right. So what Acts 20 is really saying is that after they kept the Feast of Unleavened Bread, they met on the first Sabbath. It was Sabbath 1. When you are counting to Pentecost or Shavuot, that is exactly what you do.
You count every day.
You count every day, and you count, this is, Sabbath 1, right. Sabbath 2, Sabbath 3. You count 7, and then you have Shavuot. So I wanted to touch on that, and I'll just go to Revelation since I had it. Revelation 22, just like she said. It says, blessed are those, 22:14. Blessed are those doing his commands, so that the authority shall be theirs unto the tree of life, and to enter through the gates into the city. The end of it says, and all who, the ones on the outside, but outside are the dogs, and those who enchant with drugs, and those who whore, and the murderers, and the idolaters, and all who love to do falsehood. You also find that word in 2 Thessalonians talking about the, for this reason, Elohim sends them a working delusion for them to believe the falsehood. That's, what that's talking about is Torahless. It's lawless. It's being lawless. So, one more thing I want to talk about is...
So what she's saying, just to make sure it's understood, the delusion is that the law is done away with. Do whatever you want to.
Right. Right. And he says that over and over in Matthew 7, where he talks about, I don't know who you are because you're lawless. So, let's talk about truth. Right. He says we will worship him, the true worshipers will worship him in spirit and in truth. Well, what is truth? We just make up what truth is, but actually he defines it very well.
I love it when he does that.
Psalms 119. You can read Psalms 119 and get a big dose of what truth is, but I'm just going to touch on a couple of them. Let's see. I have, so 119, I'm just going to start at the beginning. Blessed are the perfect in the way, who walk in the Torah of Yahweh. Blessed are those who observe his witnesses, who seek him with all their heart.
That is so key, because that's where the same idea that I talked about earlier was, you may be like, well, I'm doing everything I'm supposed to do. You do it the way Jesus taught, that's great. But if you're not doing it with your whole heart, it doesn't matter. Someone said once, you can learn the whole manual for Walmart, but it doesn't mean you work there.
That's good.
Yeah. It doesn't mean you work there.
It's true. All right, so 3. Yes, they shall do no unrighteousness. There's your righteousness, what our righteousness is. They shall walk in his ways. You have commanded us to guard your orders diligently. Oh, that my ways were established to guard your laws. And by doing what we can, that's what we're doing, we're guarding them. By learning them and applying what we can, we are guarding them. By sitting around talking about them, and we're guarding them. But disregarding them means we don't even open the front of the book. We just completely disregard it.
And I will say there is a difference between I didn't know that, and learning versus I don't care and I don't want that. I refuse to accept it. Whole different ballgame. That's who's outside. That's the lesser than, or the least in the kingdom.
Right.
I don't want it. Versus those who want it. It's that process.
That's right. And how many times have we heard people say, yeah, you're probably right, but I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a kind of a dangerous place to be. Let's see. I guard your laws. Okay, let's see. How about 30?
Truth.
I have chosen the way of truth. Your right rulings I have held level. 43. And do not take away from my mouth the word of truth entirely, for I have waited for your right rulings, that I might guard your Torah continually forever and ever. And here it gets even more specific.
I remember, this is David, who had the same heart of God.
That's right. So 119, 142, your righteousness is righteousness forever, and your Torah is truth. There's your definition right there. 150, those who pursue mischief have drawn near. They have been far from your Torah. You are near, O Yahweh, and all your commands are truth. 160. The sum of your word is truth, and all your righteous rulings are forever. Forever. I mean, we really need to get that into our heads. He says over and over in Torah, these things I command you forever.
Ever, yeah.
And Numbers 15:15 talks about how it's not just for the Jews, it's for anyone who wants to basically be grafted in to Israel.
Yeah, if you want to be a part of the covenant, great. Here's the line, read, and then sign on the dotted line. If you're not interested in doing that, then don't sign on the dotted line.
So that's all I have for today. And
Lots of meat, like a big old hamburger.
Yes, I just wanted to show that he was doing, the Last Supper is about a Passover. He is the fulfillment of that Passover. And the disciples and the apostles, after his death and resurrection, continued to keep Passover. We're still commanded to keep Passover. Why wouldn't we be? And it is so meaningful when you do. And I promise you can learn all you want about the festivals, but until you begin to do them, that's when you really see Yeshua being the fulfillment of all of them. And just remember, he only fulfilled the first 4 with his first coming. He has 3 more to fulfill for the fall feast. So that will be with his second coming, and I just think it'll mean a lot more if you know and you understand and you're actually doing them, like the Torah portion both of them talked about today.
And I want to say, before we end, that I really believe that our generation and our generations past have really been given a disservice by being told that everything he's covered, he died for us so that we don't have to do anything. Because it really robbed us of years of a tighter and closer relationship and being able to actively participate in that redemption and salvation. And so a part of the reason why Julie and I are here is to be able to go, hey guys, this is for everybody. We get to be a part of this relationship, not just bystanders anymore.
And again, we're not saying you have to do the law to be saved. It's not a salvation issue.
Once you're saved, you want to do it.
That's right. That's right.
The difference.
Because if he's truly writing it on your heart, you'll want to do it. Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. So if you're speaking ill about the Torah, I don't know what's written on your heart. I don't know. I don't know how else to take that.
But we can judge fruits. We are allowed to do that.
Well, that's all we have for you this week. Tune in next week. We can't wait. And I guess that's it.
That's it.
All right. Shalom.